Got my fittings here that need to go into the tank, rubber washers. I've already put the O-rings on the parts here. Got the nuts. These are left-hand threads, by the way, on the external side. The internal is pipe thread, right hand. Steel washers. The reason mine are black is I had these anodized, if you recall from a previous video. That's why those are that way. So I'm gonna fish these in through the tank using some safety wire. So what I'm going for is my gas oil sealant. I want that to just squish out around the rubber washer. That tells me I got full coverage in there. And of course I wipe the threads off, clean those for the blue Loctite on the nut, then following up after that. This looks pretty good, and they all look very similar to this. Here's the low fuel level sensor for the header tank. It's a pretty simple design here. It's just a float on a pivot. And my guess is inside here is a magnet, and there's a reed switch inside here so that when this comes up, it makes contact, closes. Probably this is a normally open circuit. I'm going to test it with my ohmmeter here. This is probably normally open. When this floats up, or in our case, actually, when the fuel level gets below this and drops below that, the magnet closes the contacts on the reed switch. That closes the circuit, gives you the light. Also, you could run this into your EFIS. So let's see. I'm going to say that it is a normally open, and then it closes. So let's test it. I don't know if you can hear the tone. Probably you can. There's the tone, and now it's open. So closed, open. So the way I'll orient this is this way, where this will be up. So with full fuel, the float is floating. As the fuel level gets below the sensor, it closes the circuit. That being the case, what I want to do is I want to clock this. Let me take this nut off. I want to clock this so that this is going to be up, and I'll put a mark on here just so that I know after I insert it into the tank which way I want it oriented. There we go. So my silver mark I want pointing upwards. Little side tip here. So I want to twist these wires together. I don't want two loose wires. You might be tempted just to chuck this end up in your drill and have at it and give it a twist. And yeah, that would work, but it would loosen up and you wouldn't get a good tight wind. Here's the trick. I learned this many years ago. Take your drill, chuck up one of the wires in your drill, tighten it up, stretch it out here. See if I can get a wider shot. There we go. Stretch it out, run your drill counterclockwise, and give it, there's no real number here, just give it a good fair amount of turns. About like so. Take it out. It'll want to kind of twist on you, that's okay, just let it be. Get your other one, chuck it up, and do the same thing, counterclockwise. About like so. Now take both of them, get it good and stretched out and even. I'm gonna snip this because one's longer than the other. Now chuck them both up and give it a twist. And what you're gonna be doing is individually untwisting. You're gonna be individually untwisting each wire, but creating a twist. And I'm going to run it in the clockwise direction now. About like so. And now what you've done is you've got a nice twist on this pair here. And additionally, you haven't introduced any stress that you're keeping in the wire. You counter-rotated it, that built up some stress in it. But then when you put them together and clockwise rotated it, you undid that stress, and now you've got a nice wind. So, little tip for you there. The supplied rubber washer that comes with the sensor is removed, and it's replaced by the RANS included rubber washer on the inside, like so. That'll go through the hole, and then another rubber washer, and then a metal washer, and then the plastic nut that comes with the sensor. Now the manual says to use Dow 730 sealant. I don't know if you've priced that. A tube of that's about $200, and you're gonna need about 10 grams of it. So I'm not going that route. I'm gonna use my Gasoila. Now I hope I don't regret this later. Don't think I will, but I'm using my Gasoila here. I've done some tests with this. I haven't done super long term, but I've got a test running right now on a test vessel with avgas under pressure, under 10 PSI, and I put a bunch of fittings in it with Gasoila. And we've been going on over 3 months now, and it's fine. And this is what they use in petroleum industry. So it's good stuff. What I don't know is, this is the unknown, is this plastic. What is it gonna do as it contacts this plastic housing of this switch? Yeah, I don't know. But I'm willing to give it a test. This is $14 for half pint, or $200 for what effectively I only need just a few grams of. I'm gonna give this a shot. I suppose the worst case scenario is it leaks, which I'll determine probably pretty quickly. And then I'll just have to deal with it. I have to get in here, take it apart, and put Dow 730 on it. But I got a feeling this is gonna be okay. Let's see if we can fish this guy in here. This one's a little trickier, but there we go. Okay, and need to orient it so my silver mark is up. I will go ahead and dab on some Gasoila. I'm gonna be generous with this. I don't really care if I make a mess. I can clean it up. I just really want this coated well. This stuff will set up. This is the soft set version. They have a hard set. Hard set would maybe be more appropriate with hard lines, gas lines that are metal. Here with flexible joint with the plastics, the soft set I think is more appropriate. So now goes a washer, a rubber washer, steel washer, and then the plastic nut. Now this is plastic hardware here, so I don't want to get stupid with it. Just want to give it a good compression, and you'll see here that gasoil compressed out around the rubber washer, and you can also see it's come through the nut, between the nut and the steel washer. That's what I want. That's telling me I got good coverage all the way around. This here I'll clean up. I don't want to wipe away my little fillet of sealant there. I just want to get the big stuff off. And now I'm going to let this set up. It really needs many days to do a full setup, but I'm just going to leave this undisturbed here for the next day or two. Manual doesn't call for it, but I put some neoprene tape on here for anti-chafe. Also, I wanted to lift the tank up a little bit, get them off these rivet heads. So this neoprene tape will do a pretty good job for that. I've marked the place where I need to drill a hole in the belly skin for the sump. This is for the tail dragger sump location. I think eventually I will do a trike sump just because this will be convertible. I just don't have the parts. I need to order from RANS the fittings for that. So for now, I'm just going to stick with the tail dragger configuration here. I measured over, I took their number from the manual, 3.7 back from the center tab and 1.1 from the front edge of this tube. And then I put the tank in and I actually measured the center of this protrusion here. And it was off a little bit. I'd rather it be centered with the tank and not by what RANS tells you to drill it. It wasn't much, it was 1/8 of an inch. So I kind of shifted my holes around, but this is the hole location I'm gonna drill. And that should land me really close to this center here. I think my plan of action here is I'm gonna pilot drill that with a number 11. Then I'm gonna stick the tank in and I'm gonna come up from underneath and have a look and see if I can see my crosshair on the tank. And that way, if it's off a little, I'm gonna use the step drill to upsize, but with the step drill, you can kind of walk it in whatever direction you want and move that hole till you get to the final size. So first I'll pilot, and I'll kind of use that as a witness hole. Well, I've crawled down under there and I can't see it, but it's a small hole, so it could be just off to the side. I think what I want to do is actually come up with a marker or something through that hole, mark the tank, take the tank out and see where it landed. Here's my dot is where I marked from the hole. Here was my crosshair. So I was off by about 1/4 inch laterally and about 1/8 of an inch fore and aft. I'm about 1/8 of an inch forward, and it looks like roughly 1/4 to the left. So it's fine. This is actually close enough I could just pop through it. But what I might try to do is shift that hole back and to the right a little bit as I'm step drilling. So I might just kind of lean more towards the back and just a little bit to the right. And that should land me a little bit closer to the center line. Again, it doesn't matter. It's close enough, but I'll try. Yeah, there we go. I got it opened up, and that's pretty well centered. I mean, that's really darn close. I'll take it. Here's my pressure test setup. Got a 10 psi gauge. Got a Schrader valve. I've capped off this port. I've capped off this port just using the sump drain. I've pressurized it to 1 psi right now. I was having some leaking at the cap, and I just gave it a little bit more and it stopped. So we'll see how this goes. I'll come back and check in a little bit. Oh, and yes, for this test, I am using Teflon tape. If you've noticed that, it's just for the test. I will not be using Teflon tape on the fittings. It is now 2 hours later, and it has not dropped any at all. So I feel safe to say that my fittings penetrating through the tank, all that sealing is okay. Obviously, I just need to make sure that when I put my AN fittings on, that those are done. I'll use my PTFE sealant when I put those in. But hey, I think I got a good sealed up tank. Here I am the next day, and it's just barely under a pound, like by a needle's width. It is cooler in here today. It's about, I don't know, 6 or 8 degrees cooler in here, so that could be a contributing factor. I don't think it's leaking in any appreciable manner that is meaningful. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the gauge off, take all these out. And I got this safetied. Now that I know that this is fine, I don't have to get in there anymore. I safetied it. I ran it here, around, and just to this fitting here. It's good and tight. So I think it's ready to final install. Need to trim these for the rudder cables. I don't quite know exactly how those run yet. But I think if I just trim off an inch or so, that should do it. There we go. I got those trimmed up. Came up about, inch and a half. Plenty. Well, more than I needed to, but at least now I know I won't have any clearance issues there. So I'm gonna go ahead and strap this in. I've already kind of preliminarily fit this. And what I found was at first I had this part, the clamp part, sitting up here on the top. And what I noticed was the skin was gonna rub on this because it protrudes up above the surface here. So I kind of slid it out, and now I'm gonna run the clamps down the side. And that way it's just the strap across the top. And there shouldn't be any interference with my forward baggage skin. All right, I didn't show the last hour I spent with this. What I discovered was the tank was sitting too high because the forward skin is supposed to rest on top of those channel straps, or strap channels, and it was sitting high, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Well, there's a couple things. So the cage tabs, I think, are a little bit, for whatever reason, just a little bit higher on this airframe. So I was able to bend them down a little bit and gain myself about 3/32 of an inch. Also, I inadvertently, and this was my mistake, the support channel that goes here was on top of the cage tab. That's supposed to go underneath, then the cage tab, and then the skin. So that lifted me up a 1/16 of an inch. And lastly, I had this channel too far aft. It needed to be forward a little bit more. So a combination of things, and I was able to kind of massage everything, and you can see now I do get a clearance for the baggage skin. So I spent an hour fiddling with all that, had to take all that apart, and that's what that was. That's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Header Tank Part 2. Next is gonna be the fuel pump and fuel valve installation. Stay tuned.